Dear Anna Paula, dear Michael, dear Vera, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants to this conference on the rule of law. Let me first congratulate and thank Portuguese Presidency for organizing this very interesting, important and timely conference. The rule of law is an essential part of European way of life. And over the last year, it has become a very topical political issue. The incoming Slovenian presidency of the Council of the EU will put special emphasis on equal respect for the fundamental values and principles of the EU, including the rule of law, which is a joint responsibility of member states and the EU institutions. The primary responsibility for ensuring respect for the rule of law lies with the democratically elected institutions and their representatives. When it comes to oversight, the pluralist media, social partners, and other civil society organizations have an important role to play. Respect for the rule of law based on the same criteria is crucial for the citizens' trust in public institutions. It is also a condition for mutual trust between the member states. Moreover, it is fundamental to the proper functioning of the internal market, where laws and regulations are drafted and applied impartially, uniformly and effectively, and budget spending follows all valid rules. As presented by Commissioner Vera, in the last couple of years, 4 major processes have aimed at strengthening a common understanding of rule of law and enhancing it throughout the EU. Let me begin with the least controversial one. The European Commission has launched an increased number of infringement procedures against member states before the Court of Justice of the EU for breaching the rule of law. The court has issued several landmark rulings preventing further systemic violation of the rule of law. Provided that the Commission acts in a non-selective manner, I believe that this is the least politicized and the best way for ensuring convergence on the rule of law in the EU. Second, as Michael has brilliantly explained, a yearly cycle with an annual rule of law report at its center has been established. It aims at promoting the rule of law in all member states and preventing challenges from emerging or deepening. In July, the European Commission is expected to present its second report. During our presidency, we will organize 2 rounds of discussions on the reports in the General Affairs Council. We believe that this preventive mechanism had a good start, and if we continue an open debate on improving the process, it will also have a great preventive and constructive potential in the future. Through a constructive dialogue based on annual reports, Slovenia will make an effort to better understand the various constitutional solutions to similar challenges in different member states. This dialogue should help bring member states together in a community of values. The mechanism must operate objectively and transparently while respecting the principle of equality of member states and their national identities, which are inextricably linked to their fundamental political and constitutional structures. We will pay special attention to the freedom and pluralism of the media and the fight against fake news. This is especially needed in environments with media monopolies. Equally important is the quality of functioning of the judicial systems in each member state. This must be based on an independent, impartial, and non-arbitrary judiciary that provides for legal protection and ensures fair trials within reasonable time. Third, the rule of law conditionality regulation was adopted last December. It is a new piece of legislation that aims at ensuring the protection of the financial interests of the Union in breaches of the rule of law where sound financial management of the EU budget is affected. The regulation will undergo the legal assessment by the Court of Justice of the EU, and the European Commission will have to present the implementing guidelines. In my view, the big challenge will be to ensure that potentially strong tool for protecting the rule of law fully complies with the standards and requirements of the rule of law, including the principles of legality and proportionality. The fourth and politically most controversial is the procedure under Article 7 of the Treaty on the European Union that has been running for some time against two member states. The aim is to address the systemic rule of law challenges through a political dialogue. In the Council, we have witnessed several hearings and state of play reports. For now, however, the possible outcome of these procedures seems unclear. As the incoming presidency, we believe it is worth additional efforts to explore possible ways forward. In doing so, the three above-mentioned processes, which did not exist at the time when Article 7 was launched, need to be considered. Unclear procedures of unknown duration run the risk of falling short of the rule of law requirements. As the incoming presidency of the Council of the EU, Slovenia will play a responsible role in furthering common understanding as how to enhance the rule of law in the EU. The key to progress towards this aim is an in-depth understanding of constitutional, socio-economic, political, historical, and other similarities and differences between the member states. Without such a thorough sociological approach, it is hardly possible to ensure that there are no double standards, which is fundamental for the future of the integration process. Why is this so important? Let me explain by citing my country as an example. For 3 decades, it has been perceived as a peaceful, well-ordered country, a good disciple of the West. Slovenia formally, swiftly introduced the necessary reforms and established the European practices that led to the EU, NATO, and OECD membership. Everything seemed perfect from the outside. However, over the last year, some international media have raised concerns regarding media freedom and the government's communication with journalists. I have to admit that the increased special attention to Slovenia is great news. There's finally some interest in what is going on in our country. Unfortunately, there was little interest in the past developments that, to put it mildly, constituted blatant and systemic denial of the rule of law, which also led to the distortion of the functioning of Slovenian democracy. In his letter to the President of the European Commission of 26 February, our Prime Minister listed 20 such internationally overlooked cases. I do not have time to outline all of them, but let me focus only on the most fundamental one. How is it possible that there has been no reaction of the judiciary in Slovenia? After around 700 mass graves with thousands of skeletons of people, including children and women, who lost their lives in extrajudicial killings right after the World War, are uncovered. Despite sound evidence, not a single person has been brought to justice, and nobody in Europe has ever publicly asked the question how this is possible. How is it possible that in 2008, when Slovenia held the presidency of the Council of the EU for the first time, The vice president of the Constitutional Court was the person who 20 years before had been the last chief of the Communist Party. It sounds incredible, but until last spring, that person was a member of the Venice Commission for Democracy through law. And the father of that person was a well-known revolutionary co-responsible for the above-mentioned extrajudicial mass killings. Can you believe that this person made such a great career after democratization by coincidence? Let me quote what that person wrote in 1988 when attacking the thesis for the first democratic constitution proposed by a group of intellectuals who, by doing this, risked everything to fight for freedom and democracy. I'm quoting, "I believe that the thesis can be criticized for not building enough on the positive tradition of the national liberation struggle and revolution." He added that the thesis underestimate, neglect, or deny the most important values and fundamental principles of the Yugoslav path to socialism, namely the social property and socialist self-government, the effort to develop a self-governing socialist democracy to liberate labor and workers. He continues, "I cannot imagine drafting new constitutional documents by making compromises with the constitutional arrangements that exist elsewhere in the world. Instead of such alchemical efforts," he continues, "we need to draw from the regulation and practices of others only if they can be related to the aforementioned positive traditions that we need to build on and further develop." So these quotes are a direct assault on the concepts of freedom, democracy, and private property. In the same text, one also finds assaults on the principle of the separation of powers and on multi-party political system. You may wonder why I am explaining this and how it relates to the rule of law. Well, it illustrates the mentality and political, judicial, and academic practices that have been highly influential and are far from extinct. It points to the tip of an iceberg of the rule of law challenges in Slovenia. Democratization and formal procedures and guarantees alone do not ensure the rule of law. They can also work as a handy disguise for defending unjustified privileges and for upholding the culture built in decades of undemocratic practices that curtail freedom and perpetuate deeply rooted injustices. Old habits die hard, especially when it comes to autonomous systems such as judiciary. And we believe that in the EU as well, many are unwilling or unable to see that formally adopted rule of law standards and guarantees do not necessarily protect the European values enshrined in Article 2 of the Treaty of the European Union. And therefore, Slovenia, in its capacity as the presidency of the Council of the EU in the second half of this year, will also draw attention to the resolution 1096 of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe and to the European Parliament resolution on European consciousness and totalitarianism. We do not believe that the transition to a real transformation of hearts and minds has been accomplished everywhere. To address this and all other rule of law challenges, Slovenian presidency will propose the establishment of the European Foundation for Constitutional Democracy. It would be, in fact, an independent institute mandated to bring together the best and renowned experts from all EU member states that could help the European Commission and member states to independently analyze individual cases where the rule of law has been challenged. It would also depoliticize the four above mentioned processes for strengthening the rule of law throughout the EU. And Slovenia is ready to host and provide the basic infrastructural conditions for the work of such an independent institute. By this, I conclude with full gratitude to the Portuguese Presidency and also Germany before Portugal Presidency for our good cooperation in trio, also when it comes to the rule of law, which is of fundamental importance also for our future. Thank you for your attention.